do you know, it's Monday again. I knew that was going to happen. It is the beginning of the week, the last week of October, Halloween week. We are looking forward to some fascinating things going on this week, and then certainly next week as well. Monday, November the 4th next week, may just be the day that Hillary steps in. She's really primarily waiting and hoping that Biden will just throw in the towel. I mean, the guy's got, talk about millstones. He's going down. He doesn't have a chance. If he were a gentleman, of course, what politician is noted for its gentlemanliness, or a lady with class, which he is certainly not either, he would get out. Anyhow, this is all going to shake out very soon. First up tonight is a gentleman who has not been on the program before, but he is remarkably well informed. Let's just put it this way. He was on the inside for a long time. He has done a lot of his own research. He is under national security restraints. He cannot speak about certain things, but he can speak about things that he himself was able to dig up and assemble. And he's going to talk about those. He has a new book out, which we'll be talking about as well during this hour. We're going to go 90 minutes tonight with Mitchell Henderson, and then David John Oates will be here for the second 90 minutes of the program. It is not often that you get a chance in this business to talk to someone who really is an insider, who has that kind of knowledge, who wants to share it, and who is not pushing and hustling and conning and making stuff up. And I've spoken to Mitchell Henderson off the air, and Mr. Henderson is clearly bringing forth information that not only has he never presented in public before, but frankly, it makes him a little nervous to do it. But we're very honored to have him on tonight. Mitchell, are you there? Can you hear me all right?
Yes, I can hear you just fine. Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
You're welcome. Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for stepping forward. What prompted you to stick your neck out, which is really what you're doing? I mean, even though you've got a lot of this data, it's your data, you can do what you want with it, but we all know that they don't necessarily like this stuff being pushed around in the mainstream media.
Well, mostly it's just that I've had a life of a lot of experiences, military, police experiences, working overseas for the government on various missions and stuff, and just everything, just general social stuff, even college, everything. It's like there's all these lessons that I have learned, and I've seen the nature of the beast, and I just want people to wake up and realize that the government is a beast. Okay, it's not your friend. It's there to control you and take from you,
and never more openly and ruthlessly. They're not even pretending anymore. They're just doing it. I have said this so many times before, but it does appear that they realized that there would be no meaningful pushback, and they just let it go. At least that's how it looks to me. How do you see it?
Well, I think that first of all, one of the first things that I learned in government is that government, in fact, cannot control everything. They rely very heavily on voluntary compliance. Okay, and voluntary compliance comes from ignorance. Okay, what people don't know,
like that.
They believe.
That's very good. Very good. Voluntary compliance comes from ignorance. Yes, it does. All right. So you go back how many decades in this game? When did you first start?
Well, I started in 1971 because my draft number was 11 during the Vietnam War. So, but I didn't wait to be drafted. I just went down and joined. Then I just stayed in. I have 28 years total time in the Army. That's active, reserves, and National Guard. 14 years as an enlisted person, 14 years as an officer. And then I also did work. I worked as a police officer in Tampa, Florida for 5 years. That was a very active job. I only did 1 year of street patrol, and then a year of mugging decoy, a year of prostitution vice, then a year of hunting Bobby Joe Long, the serial killer, with homicide, and then my final year was on organized crime, human trafficking.
Upbeat, fun stuff. Yeah.
Oh yeah, a lot of action. I've led a very violent and active life. I'll put it that way.
You've been an observer of violent and active life, for sure, from a number of different perspectives. We won't go any further than that. Let's just leave it there. I had a story up today. It was kind of amusing. And I posted just because there are newcomers who want to read this and need to read these things. U.S. government has a long history of involving itself with controlling and corrupting foreign elections. And never more blatant and arrogant than what the CIA has done in Central America. I mean, how many people have died because of the interference from this country through the CIA, which is really a rogue, totally rogue element of what we call government, in my view.
Well, they're sort of like, actually, I think they need to be abolished. What they do is they take peace from the world. They create wars. They create all kinds of problems everywhere. When I was in Central America, this is back during the war in El Salvador, for this El Salvadoran communists, something very drastic happened. The Soviet Union in 1989 could no longer fund them, and they couldn't fund Cuba nor Nicaragua, and those two countries didn't have enough money to fund the communists either. Well, to go back a little bit, in the first place, the CIA rigged the election in El Salvador so that the Christian Democrats under Duarte would win. Okay, well, that meant that war would go on, and the U.S. would support it. If D'Aubuisson of Arena had won, the United States would not have gotten involved. The Congress wouldn't allow any money to go to El Salvador. So they purposely rigged the election so Duarte would win because he would be like a modern Democrat in the United States. And, nobody knows what he stood for. So the conflict would go on. This was a destabilization operation. We can control the government by simply just destabilizing their country. Then they need us to prop them up. So we rigged that election. Then we ran into a problem in 1989 when all of a sudden the communists didn't have support anymore. Well, I found out on my own, okay, that sort of by accident, but I found out that the United States, the CIA, was actually funneling money and weapons to the guerrillas in El Salvador, the communists. Okay.
Yeah, I think we need to. Mitchell, excuse me, but I've been using that word as it applies to various factions in this country for quite a while now, and I think it's very appropriate that we begin to use it in a much broader approach, because communism is communism. Socialism is communism. And there are evidences now that over 21%, I think it was, of the younger generation will support communist candidates in this country, and something close to 40% will support what they think to be our socialist candidates in this country. That's not encouraging. That suggests an awful lot of younger people have been living in a cave, and that's about the size of it. Not good. Well, also, they're not taking... I mean, if you look at Eastern Europe now and stuff, the reason why they're not buying into the EU's cultural Marxist agenda is they just got their countries back in 1992. They had 2 generations go through communism. They don't want communism now. Not even Russia wants communism.
They've lived it. They know communism, socialism, leftist causes in the last century cost hundreds of millions of lives. Okay, if it comes to the United States, believe it or not, hundreds of millions of Americans will probably die. If you just look at the Green New Deal put out by Congress, House Resolution 8, whatever, it specifically targets white privileged people for extermination. Okay, It says that all the underprivileged people should be given everything, and it be taken away from the white privileged class and stuff.
Well, excuse me,
this is the same language they used in Russia. You know?
Yes. But we're so dumb. We're not only giving it away to the people you described, but we're giving it away to invaders who are thrusting their way across our international border. This is beyond suicidally insane. I cannot believe what I'm seeing. These people are being plucked out of deepest, darkest sub-Saharan Africa, the Middle East. These are Stone Age people in many respects. They're being brought over here and injected into our nation and given everything free, essentially, for life. What is that all about? And I know the answer, but I'm just throwing that out there.
Well, what I think it's about is something very simple. Okay, out of Northern Europe in the Reformation came the concept of individual freedom and liberty. Okay, this is what founded our Constitution, our Bill of Rights, and whatnot. Because these people were very individualist, self-sufficient, self-dependent people, whereas the societies where we're bringing people in from Latin America, from Africa, from the Middle East, these are all collectivist societies. So these are people who will vote for socialism, who will vote to take us down the path of communism and the genocide that follows it. It's intentional.
Yeah, it always does. Absolutely. Yeah, sure. They're queuing up to support mass death, because that's what always happens with communism, Bolshevism, Marxism, Leninism, whatever you want to call it. People die. Lots of people die. And that's what these people are voting for. Chaos, anarchy, and death. That's right.
For their own death is what they're doing. Right. They don't know it. They're being led down this path. Now, another thing that I have is I have a bachelor's and a master's in geography, and I've watched this climate change scam go on for so long. Climate change is the threat that they're trying to scare everybody with to unify the world into a one world globalist government, a globalist cultural Marxist culture, and a globalist economy, where the price of everything is driven so high that everybody will be impoverished. You have 7.6 billion people on Earth. If we cut off fossil fuels, billions of people will perish. Billions will die, because fossil fuels not only give us energy, they give us pharmaceuticals, they're used for farming and agriculture, they're used to make plastics. I mean, everything comes from it.
Right.
So, what are we going to do without it?
Personally, I'm not comfortable hearing the term from anybody, fossil fuels, because it's really abiotic oil, as you know. The Earth is constantly producing oil. We'll never run out. It's made by geological processes deep within the Earth's crust, near the surface, and then pushed up, and it pools up in what we call oil pools, oil fields. So the idea of peak oil, to me, has been as big a con job as global warming, climate change. These are just devices to try to scare people into compliance and conformity, are they not?
Well, yes, they are. Peak oil was all the rage up until about 2010, when they predicted that peak oil would happen, and the opposite happened. We got more oil, not less, after 2010. So that's why they're so stuck on climate change now. They always have to have some mechanisms to cause the people fear, because if you make the people afraid, you'll get the people to pay more money, and you get the people to give up their personal freedoms and stuff. Okay. So it's just what government does. It does it. Even your local police department does it. I mean, oh, you have all this high crime. We need more sales tax money to pay for it. They did this in Tampa once. They said, oh, there's all these murders and rapes and burglaries and robberies, and we need 1 penny more on sales tax. Well, I'm on the department when this happened, and when it happened, what did they do? They didn't hire a single detective to take care of more of those cases. What they used that money for is to hire another squad of narcotics detectives, because narcotics investigations make money for the city. And then they hired a traffic squad that did nothing but write tickets, because that makes money for the city. So it's all about, they want more money because money gives them control. It's with this money they can offer free candy to the voters. The voters will fall for this free candy, and then the people think they're paying for protection when they're getting less protection. They're actually being attacked by the system. Okay.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. When you look at the issue of the CIA involving itself with corrupting the politics of the so-called electoral process, democracy in foreign countries, when you look at the American political scene, how do you how do you parse that out compared to what we know goes on outside of our own borders?
Well, what really fascinates me is how it was public information that under Hillary Clinton, they pumped over, I think, I may be conservative in this figure, $15 million into the last election of Putin to try to defeat him. They even paid protesters to go out and protest against him. And that was open news. Everybody in the news knew that we did that, and that was widely supported. We also sent campaign managers and so forth over to Israel to try to get Netanyahu defeated last time. So it's public information that we interfere with Russia, Israel, and everybody else's election. But then if you listen to them now, like, oh, it's some holy sacrosanct thing that well, Russia, I think, spent $150,000 on trying to affect our last election. That's nothing. That's 1% of what we paid to disrupt Trump's election. So it's the hypocrisy of it is there's two things: the hypocrisy of the whole thing, and then there's also how do people forget the news of just 2012 and 2014? It's like 2012 and 2014 never happened. The news is never given any historical context of these things. I mean, we blame Russia as this big bad person, okay, but who is the one who broke the rules first? We say, well, when they invaded Crimea and took it and so forth, that this is a violation of international law. Well, invading Serbia against the United Nations wishes, invading Iraq against the United Nations wishes, invading Libya against the United Nations wishes. Those are all breaches of international law that the United States does, okay? And then we separate, without United Nations permission, we create a new country called Kosovo out of an old country called Yugoslavia. And that was all illegal under the United Nations. We promised Russia that we would not move NATO 1 inch to the east, and now NATO is right on Russia's borders. So who is it that really is the bad guy? Is it Russia or is it us? You know?
It's us. And let me add something to what you just said very astutely. One of Donald Trump's latter major campaign promises was that American troops and armor would be pulled out of Europe and back home so as not to instigate more NATO provocations against Russia. He promised us that multiple times. And what did he do the first day in office? He announced that we're sending 5,000 more troops and tanks to stand with our NATO brothers in Europe against the Russian threat. That was lie number one. And I That was it for me, and I've never stopped counting the lies and betrayals since. Hold on a second, Mitch. We have to take a break. We'll come right back.
Okay.
As we continue a very interesting and valuable conversation with Mitchell Henderson. Stay tuned. All right, and we're back. Talking with Mitchell Henderson, who has a brand new book out. You can check right under his name in guests, and you'll see it. It's called A Man Beyond His Mission, an insider's secret history of the decay of American society, military and law enforcement. I mean, you lose American society, military, and law enforcement. What else is there? Book is for sale on Amazon. You can click on the title and go right there. And this is a very valuable book for all of you who are looking for reality. This one is a rare one. It's unusual. Yes, as I mentioned, he is under stricture. He cannot speak about everything, but he can speak about a lot. And you can connect the dots in other areas as well. You mentioned how they are using now climate change, global warming, to try and scare the masses into conformity. This always brings me back to Henry Kissinger's 1970s something announcement. I think he made the statement in L.A. that one day if there was an off-planet threat to all humankind, they would immediately rally behind the government, save us, and do exactly as they're told. I'm paraphrasing loosely. You probably remember that quote. It's a very famous quote.
Well, yes, and I think we've seen that too. Good examples are some common movies like Independence Day about aliens invading the Earth, and then you have Armageddon about a big asteroid coming to the Earth, and it unifies all of the people on Earth in this common cause. Well, what better thing than climate change, which affects the whole Earth, to use as an excuse to get people to give up their freedoms, and to gain control over what everybody does. I mean, look at France. France has, they put a carbon tax on people, and so the yellow vests have been out protesting nonstop since. They're just gouging people for money. They're trying to impoverish everyone in the world. There'll just be a few rich people, and everybody else will be impoverished.
Oh, they're well on the way to it. Yes. Yes. Here's a tie-in. Ed Snowden put out, and I mentioned this when we talked earlier. But for those of you who missed it, it was in the headlines last night. You can find it. Ed Snowden said, in all of his journeys and trials and tribulations as a hacker, in our deepest, darkest servers, he says, he never found one word confirming the reality of extraterrestrial intelligent life or UFOs. Now, I laughed when I saw that because obviously, in my view, he's trying to curry favor with someone or doing what he's told. Hey, Ed, if you want things to go easier on you, we need you to make this statement. He said, I didn't see anything. That doesn't mean it wasn't there, but I didn't see it. Well, go ahead, Mitchell. Yeah.
He's a young man, and he has his whole life ahead of him, so he has to worry about what he says. See, I'm an old man, and so I'm retired. I'm done. I can say what I want because what are they going to do to me? So I have no reason to be quiet anymore. I have no reason to curry favor with anybody. Okay. And I'm not interested in doing that. When my job in public service, I took an oath in 1971 to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. But you know what? In 28 years, I never went to a war where we fought just to preserve our Constitution. Not once, ever. Okay? I never went to war to protect our Constitution. Okay? But I see the threat is here at home. The enemy is domestic. It's not foreign. It's not coming from overseas. It's coming from right here. amongst us. Okay, we're in league with like the European Union and stuff like that. We have common cause with them, but the threat is clearly here. There are many things in my career where I thought certain things that the Constitution said were like inviolable, but then I started realizing that through the years what they've done is they've interpreted the Bill of Rights out of existence almost. I mean, you know, they're what people, and there's people who actually buy into the idea that, well, we don't need the Constitution anymore. But you know what? It's like you and me, we have to obey the law of do not murder, do not rob, do not, you know, do all this stuff. So we have laws we have to obey. What the Constitution is, it's the law that the government has to obey. But the government wants to get rid of that Constitution, like ditch the Electoral College, senators, et cetera, take away the Second Amendment, whatnot. The whole purpose, okay, is that the government wants to be lawless. They don't want to obey the law. They want to just do what they want to do.
I think they're already doing that, aren't they, Mitchell? To a significant degree? Sure.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Yes, they're doing it right now.
Now, I had a story yesterday and a poll. Whenever I see poll, I just kind of chuckle, but there was a poll that the majority of younger Americans want to see the First Amendment rewritten. And they claim primarily because they want hate speech done away with. They think that they're reaching for some new nirvana of enlightenment by getting rid of hate speech. Well, the First Amendment is the First Amendment. You don't adjust it. You don't juggle it. You don't play with it. You're not partially pregnant. You're pregnant or you're not. We have a First Amendment. Hate speech is allowed under the First Amendment. Not according to the millennials, not according to the generations coming up behind them. They are all in favor of rewriting the First Amendment. And that will be the end. That'll be the end.
Well, it will be. I mean, if you look at it, one of the thing that makes America different than every other nation on earth is that we have a Bill of Rights that says that the government can do pretty much what it wants, but it cannot do these 10 things. Okay, these are restrictions on the government to ensure individual liberty. And no other country on earth has this. If you're in England or Australia or New Zealand, you can go to jail for what you say. In America, well, you can't. I mean, all my life I've seen these fights where localities wanted to outlaw like the F word or something like this, and here we are back again where Massachusetts wants to outlaw the B word. You know, it's like they just keep plugging away, and they change things. The way that things change, and I've seen this in my life, is abrupt change is very hard to accomplish. But they use this tactic or strategy called the inevitability of gradualism. They just chip away at it little by little by little. So we went from when I was young, where they said, "Oh well, you know what? Freedom of speech means you can say the F word," to now Massachusetts passing a law where it's illegal to say the B word. Okay. And, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Okay. So, actually I would say that I used to work as policeman in the black community a lot. And, they use the B word constantly and consistently. So wouldn't that not be in fact a racist law against black people?
Right. What Mitchell's saying, of course, is the N word. All right. So.
Well, no, they use the B word when they talk about the women and everything. I mean, they bandy that word about like crazy.
Oh, the B-I-T-C-H word. Okay.
Right, the B-I-T-C-H word.
But the N word is used all the time by especially blacks. I mean, that's.
Oh yeah, they use it constantly amongst themselves. They've trained the white people not to say that. Okay, so it's almost like the truth of the matter is African Americans are their own oppressors. Okay,
so it's like
We
self-regulating.
got over it 50 years ago, but they're still doing it.
Very clever how they do that to people. They get them to enforce what they want and the people never figure it out. It's amazing. Okay, let me jump back to this Ed Snowden, who, as you just very adroitly pointed out, has his whole life ahead of him, basically. He just got married, I guess, a while ago, and he's saying these things because he wants a break. He wants to be able to come home at some point. And with a liberal administration, which could happen in a year, he can come home. He's looking ahead. So that's what he wants. That's why he said that. And I think many of you who saw the story maybe at first said, What? Ed Snowden? If anybody would know, it would be Ed. Well, Ed does know. And so does our guest, Mitchell. Mitchell has seen UFOs. He knows what's going on. Let's just spend a little bit of time on this, Mitchell, if we can. Meanwhile, just let me preface this by saying that the Navy bringing out this Tic Tac issue that was 2004 has since then 15 years of more experiences, more footage, more videos, more encounters. It's nutty. So how real to Mitchell Henderson is the UFO ET visitation paradigm?
Okay, well, let me tell you the incident that I observed, okay, which is unexplainable, actually. But I was working at a copper mine in southern New Mexico, and what my job was, I had this little hut out in the middle of nowhere, but these trucks would come up with sulfuric acid that they would use to extract copper from the rock, and I had to inspect the trucks when they came. Well, they would only come maybe 4 or 5 trucks a night, so I didn't have a lot of work to do, but I did a lot of reading during that time. But one night, what usually would happen is I'd see down the road, about a mile away, I'd see the headlights of the truck coming up, and then I'd get my clipboard and my flashlight out to go inspect the truck. Well, I saw these headlights coming up the road, so they're coming from the north, this pair of headlights. I get my clipboard and my flashlight, and I walk outside. This is about 11 o'clock at night. Okay, so it's dark as can be. And this is
You're
an
in the
area
middle
where
of
there is
nowhere,
no
aren't
lighting.
you?
Yeah, it's in the middle of nowhere. So there is no city lighting to obscure anything. But all of a sudden, it turned to daytime. It looked just like day. It was like daytime. There's no sun or nothing, but it was daytime outside. Okay. And this lasted for several minutes, and I'm like, what the hell, So I called my wife, who was about 30 miles away. Okay. And she said, I just saw some headlights coming up our driveway, and this is in the middle of nowhere up in the mountains. Okay. And she said, then it turned to daylight. But her headlights were coming from they were coming from the east, okay, and mine were coming from the north. Well, the next day in the Silver City newspaper, they reported that thousands of people saw this, and the headlights came from every different direction. But there was no truck there, no car there. It's like as soon as the headlights went away, boom, it turned to daytime. Okay, so they asked the Air Force, the Army at White Sands, if they were doing any experiments or anything, and they said, well, no, and if they do an experiment, they actually do it at White Sands. They don't come out to civilian areas and to do an operation like that. So, and then they did some research and found out that this had occurred in northern Minnesota just about a month earlier. So the question is what was that? It's like it's nothing that we on Earth here can do. Okay, so. So I have a very open mind on these things. It's like, the very thing of calling it an unidentified flying object or an unidentified anything, okay, implies, well, it's unidentified. It's phenomena that we know that happens, but we don't know what it is, quite what it is or where it comes from. Okay, so the possibilities, I think it's very possible. There are people that, I just want to interject this, because there's a lot of people that said, well, we would have heard radio signals from them if they were space people, they'd have to communicate, and we would pick up the radio signals. Well, in the past year, China has really gone forward on this. They have a thing called quantum communications using quantumly entangled electrons, and it can communicate instantaneously through space, and it can't be intercepted. Okay, because what it is you have say you have an electron that's an upspin and one that's a downspin, so that's your 1 and your 0, and then you put that in the chain and you can communicate with it. Well, when the quantumly entangled electrons move, it's faster than the speed of light. So there's no way to intercept it. Well, it would not, if we just now are at the point where the Chinese are using quantum entanglement for communication, wouldn't somebody who could travel here from a different planet, would they not be able to communicate that way? Maybe for a long time, and that's why we haven't heard any radio signals from them, is because...
the idea of looking for radio signals, Mitchell, has always been comic relief in my view, of course.
Yeah. So, obviously they have different ways of... even we now have different ways to communicate that cannot be intercepted, so why wouldn't they? If they can travel here, they probably figured that out, it could be a million years ago. I don't know.
Easily. And this planet being 4.5 to 5 billion years old, my goodness, we've been here collectively in our alleged recorded history for, 100,000 years at the most, and viably for the last 15,000. And within that 15,000, we had some kind of a cataclysm. Most everyone agrees on that now, even geologists. 11 to 12,000 years ago. We've arisen and destroyed ourselves too many times to count. That's the irony of this whole thing. This is not the first time around the block here. And they have us all under their thumbs. We're under the boot of this hegemonistic, ruthless control grid, the Matrix. And they are not going to cut us any slack at all. It's up to us to make our own decisions and incorporate our own awareness. There's a lot of great information out there now, and you're hearing some of it right now. So I would urge you to get Mitchell Henderson's book. Again, click under the book or click on the title, and you go right to the Amazon page. This is a reader. This is one you need to read. This is a good one. So let me do this. Since we have these stories now, zipping by relatively frequently in the media of large asteroids zipping by relatively frequently the planet in between the Earth and the Moon, and sometimes quite close, and many saying that we cannot see these things coming toward us if they're coming direct on toward, in other words, a perpendicular angle toward the radar, deep space, let's call it radar, that looks for these things. Not only could we not see one, if the government did realize one was going to hit us, they wouldn't tell us. They're not going to do that. They'd let it hit, and then we'll have to deal with it.
They'll dig in. They have shelter for 0.05% of the U.S. population, which is the government officials and the super wealthy. Not for the rest of us. Russia, on the other hand, they have shelters stocked with food and water for 80% of their population.
Is it 80% of the total population now? 80. Yes, that's 80%. Remarkable.
You have to remember. Wow. Russia is twice as big as the United States with only half the population. Okay.
Yeah.
And they built a lot of those shelters back during the communist days and stuff, when they could just build them without regard to, financing or anything. So they had a lot of infrastructure in place already, and we just never bothered. 2 years ago, Russia had a nuclear drill where they emptied out an entire city, a large city of over 1 million people, in less than 30 minutes. In America, we've never had any such drill at all, ever.
I hope all of you are listening carefully to this. It's all true. We had a civil defense program in the 1950s, and then it was gone. No more, nothing since. We are expendable. Human life means nothing to the people that are pulling the strings. Nothing. It's, if anything, it's just a device for them. Killing people is a device. They use it to accomplish whatever ends they're after. The Russians, under the Soviet Union, built, and I think it's been expanded since then, shelters in a ring around Moscow that can literally house the entire city. Underground, with food and water and relative sanitary. They've got it all. Does that tell you anything about what your government cares here? About you? It cares nothing about you. The trillions and trillions and trillions being wasted on overseas adventurism or being outright looted and stolen should be going into our infrastructure, which includes civil defense.
Oh, go ahead.
Should. No, you're done. I'm done. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I was going to say that one of the things that, as an Army officer, I was an armored cavalry officer. One of the things that really just boggled my mind was when we started putting electronics into everything, having Blue Force and Red Force trackers, having depending on computers to do everything. In the military and stuff. And of course, one of the things I had taken a communication security course. I can't get into the details of how they do it, but back then I could sum it up in one sentence. There is no such thing as communication security. Okay. I recently, 2 years ago, I talked to a signals intelligence graduate at Fort Huachuca in Arizona at the military intelligence school. And I said, well, I don't want you to give any classified information, but you just spent 9 months in a signals intelligence course. What can you sum up what you learned in one sentence? So I didn't prompt him or anything, but after a few minutes, he said, oh yeah, okay, so there's no such thing as communication security. Okay, well, the fact is that all of this electronics, it will be gone within 60 seconds of the initiation of any war with China, North Korea, or Russia. With any advanced country, all that's gone in 60 seconds. So why did the Pentagon, why did the DOD, why did Congress agree to spend all this money on all this electronics? Well, they did it because this electronic development ultimately is going to be used to control us. It's got nothing to do with fighting war. It's to develop methods in order to track and control every person. Okay?
Right.
It's always
5G.
about control, is what it is.
Right. 5G is the most blatant, obvious example. But what I've been saying lately is that everyone was talking about being chipped, Mitchell, and
yes.
They're already chipped. They're carrying their chips around in their hand. It's called a smartphone. That's the chip.
Yeah.
They don't have to put it inside. People voluntarily are chipped. Smartphones, laptops.
Everything about all this control technology is that people actually go out and buy it. You'd think that there'd be all this resistance to it, but it's just the opposite. People are craving it. People spend good money for it. They line up at stores to buy it. Okay.
And wear T-shirts to advertise it. I mean, it's crazy when you think about it. Hold on, we have to break here. We'll come right back. Another half an hour to go with Mitchell Henderson. Just a remarkable conversation. I hope you'll buy his book. We'll be right back with much more. Okay, and welcome back. So many things to talk about. Mitchell Henderson's book is one of those that doesn't come along very often. An insider speaking his mind and telling us the truth. We have many other areas we could go into. He sent me some notes that I've read through, and let me spend, just if I can, Mitchell, a little bit of time on North Korea, which has been almost desperately lampooned by the controlled American mainstream media, which is, remember, owned by just 6 corporations, all who are locked at the hip, as you well know, with the same matrix agenda. So Kim is being made out to be an idiot. His army is dismissed as being a kind of a mistrained, uncoordinated, lousy bunch of troops. And this issue of did he or didn't he detonate a hydrogen bomb? Remember, we called that a lie. They said it wasn't a hydrogen bomb. Tell us a little bit about the truth regarding Kim and North Korea, as you see it. Former Army, former Intel, and all the rest of the things you've done. Again, with your own information, we're not disclosing any top secret or otherwise classified data. Go ahead.
Right. Well, what I know about nuclear weapons are actually not classified. You can look it up. But there's two types of bombs, a uranium bomb and a plutonium bomb. The difference between the two is a uranium bomb, it's very difficult to make U-235. But once you have it, to make that into a bomb is very simple. You just have a subcritical mass at one point. You can use a lead pipe, like a yard long, and then have a plug with another subcritical mass behind that with some just gunpowder to shoot it into the other one, and it'll blow up. You get a nuclear explosion. Mm-hmm. Now, the plutonium bomb is much more difficult because what you do is you have a big ball, but it's empty in the middle. Okay, so you have all this explosive lensing on the outside and triggers that must be timed exactly so that it implodes exactly. So to get plutonium is very easy, but to make it into a bomb, it requires a high degree of technology. And one of the things that you do to a plutonium bomb to potentiate it to up the yield is you shoot, there's a little port and you can shoot tritium gas into it. I've actually had my hands on these things, okay, so I know how they work. So the amount of tritium you inject into it, it's a gas, but it's a highly radioactive gas. And so hydrogen comes in three isotopes. You have protium, which is an electron and a neutron. No, an electron and a proton. And you have deuterium, which is electron, neutron, and a proton, which is not radioactive. Then tritium has two neutrons. That one neutron is very radioactive because a neutron in 13 seconds, I think, it decays into a electron and another proton. So it's highly unstable, but it's very radioactive. But what it is hydrogen. So we had a general come on TV and say, oh, it was just a tritium bomb. It wasn't a hydrogen bomb. Well, that was a bold-faced lie. Tritium is hydrogen. They don't inject plain hydrogen into the core of the bomb because that won't do anything. If you put deuterium in there, it'll actually slow the reaction down. If you put tritium in there, then it potentiates the explosion and gives you a greater yield. So, in fact, Kim did do this. So that's the first part. The second part is when we talk about Iran and we say, oh, AI is no big threat. Okay, well, they're making uranium. That's not used to put on a warhead to shoot somewhere. That's what you use to sneak into a country and assemble the bomb in that country. That's a terrorist bomb. Okay, because you can't trace where it came from. And the public is totally unaware of all these facts, okay? The second thing is we hear on the news all the time that, well, North Korea is so poor that their army is no good. They're underfed. They're not well trained. They're not taken care of, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Well, so in my life and in my work, I can get product. I used to get products from two different agencies, the Central Intelligence Agency, which they interpret things in the light of what they think it is. Okay. It's a biased report. And then the Defense Intelligence Agency that must tell the truth because this is soldiers' lives. You need to have the truth when you go into combat. Well, the DIA handbook on North Korea, the current one, says just the opposite. Their soldiers are trained to the max. They are very good soldiers. They are very devoted soldiers. They do not have a bad army. They can overrun South Korea. They can take it. They have that ability. Okay. But they never tell us that, you know.
We got to remember, just a quick aside here, Mitchell, Seoul is only 35 miles from the border. That's a pretty short throw.
Well, their artillery can wipe out Seoul. I mean, I was stationed there for 2 years in the Army, so I'm kind of aware of the situation. We moved everything south of Seoul, supposedly out of field artillery range, but that's still not going to make a very big difference. So that's another case of the government lying to us and stuff. So one of the well, they lied to us about everything. It's like, let me give you an example, and this is a point that I tried to make in my book, and that is that whenever they declare war on something vague, like the war on poverty, the war on crime, the war on drugs, the war on terrorism, those are all in fact wars against the American people. They are not wars against, because terrorism is not an enemy; that's a method of warfare. And you can already see how it's gone from, well, in 9/11, before 9/11, we never had a Muslim in Congress. Now we've had 3, okay? And the Democrats completely just continue the drumbeat that the real threat is white nationalists, okay? Which is 63% of our population, if you want to break it down. But not that they're nationalists. It's just that you're a nationalist whether you like it or not. Okay, they have labeled you such. So the war on crime caused the United States to have the highest per capita imprisonment rate of any country in the history of Earth. We imprisoned more people per capita than Stalin did, than Mao did, in South Africa under apartheid. That was the war on crime. So what was that? That was a war on the American people. And what now are they talking about? Well, we need to let all these people we put in jail for drug crimes, non-violent drug crimes. We need to let them go and stuff. So what was the war on drugs? That was a war on the American people. It wasn't a war on other people. You have to understand my discouragement. I risked my life to go to Colombia to meet with the head of the Cali cartel without any backup whatsoever, make a deal with him so I could put him in jail. I did succeed. I did put him in jail. Okay, I risked my life to do that. At that time, a kilo of heroin cost $250,000 a kilo, wholesale. Right now, you can buy that same kilo of heroin for $16,000. Does that sound like success in the drug war? No. The crime rate actually went up since the war on crime started. The war on poverty, I think when it started, the poverty rate was 2.5. Now it's 2.7, so it's gone up. So all these wars that they declare on vague things, because in the military you have to have a clear and achievable objective. Well, terrorism has been with us since the beginning of time. So has crime, by the way. So has drug use. All these things, poverty, they've all been with us. So there's no chance of victory over any of these things because, well, they're things that have always been here. We're not going to stop them. So
we're not going to stop them, and we're not going to be allowed to stop them either. No.
Oh, no, and that's another thing my book brings out is I saw how the political correctness and cultural Marxism has made the police and the military actually into very snowflake people. I mean, you have to get in Afghanistan for a battalion commander to do an operation. He had to get approval from a JAG officer who knows absolutely nothing about tactics, strategy, or operational art. Okay, we send people to jail for killing the enemy. I mean, for crying out loud, it's like they have designed our army, our military, to not ever win anything. They have developed the police into a situation where there's no way they can stop crime, and as a matter of fact, they're discouraged from arresting criminals because they might lose their jobs and go to jail if they arrest a criminal. So it's like they've weakened all this and stuff. Okay, and it's intentional, and it's because we're the leader of the world, so they need us to they need two things. They need us to be weaker so that we have to join with the rest of the world in this global enterprise, and then also we have to get rid of the American people. They have to get rid of our guns because political power, as Stalin said, political power grows out of the barrel of a long gun. So the only way that they can have this globalist one world government is they must get rid of our right to bear arms. They have to get rid of our right of free speech, religion. They got to get rid of all of it if they're going to have this globalist government that they want, and that is their goal. I don't know if you remember, but back in 1972, when Nixon was running, Gary Allen wrote a book called None Dare Call It Conspiracy, where he talked about this globalist conspiracy way back then.
I remember that.
He was talking about it. And Nixon was a big globalist. He was for a new world order. And we've continually heard this, like Bush after the first Gulf War. Now we have a new world order. It's just this constant drumbeat. This new world order, this international government will be the most impressive thing that humanity has ever seen.
Well, the control that they have already on us is overwhelming and beyond the belief potential of most people. Give it another couple of years with 5G, AI, we will be the second most so-called sentient species on the planet. AI is going to take over. And one of the funniest things I saw in terms of a story about AI was that they, I guess it was Google, were talking about, we are going to build in, what was it? I want to say compassion into AI. Common sense.
Right.
Common sense and compassion. Well, whose common sense and whose compassion are they talking about? It's a joke. It's all a joke. AI is coming at us like a runaway freight train. Understand that. Every day it is moving closer, and there is no withstanding it. None. Nothing. Nothing you can do. I don't want you to give up. Please continue to stay informed. You know that's the job and mission that we have here. But honest to God, don't die for it. It ain't going to work. They have it. It's too late. The door was shut long ago. Go ahead.
Well, here's the thing is, I happen to have some friends that are scientists at Los Alamos National Laboratory, and they have actually worked on what they call the IoT, the Internet of Things. And ideally, they want to put the Internet of Things along with AI to control, their goal ultimately is to create a new species, call it Homo Deus, like God-man, that has
Homo
all these
Deus.
capabilities.
Is this a word? Excuse me.
It's
Homo
Latin.
Deus. This is yes, I get it. Is this a term you've heard used?
There's a professor in Israel who wrote a book called Homo Deus, and it's a short history of the future. And he talks about this. He talks about incorporating technology into human beings to make human beings better, to improve us and stuff. Okay, so the plans are more nefarious than people realize, and it's because most people want to be entertained. They don't want to learn. They just turn on their TV to be entertained.
No, the cult of entertainment and escapism and non-accountability and rationalization, non-application of self to life and the planet, and all of that. It's all been nurtured. It's all been planted. We are completely under their control already. And thank God that there are a few radio programs like this left. You know what they're doing to websites all over the internet. They're just going away. They're starting at the bottom end and working their way up. Oh, yeah.
As a matter of fact, 2 years ago, I looked at cultural Marxism on Wikipedia, and it explained the Frankfurt School of Marxism, Freudism, and stuff. Well, now if you look under Frankfurt School, it'll still tell you the same thing. But if you type in cultural Marxism, they just say, "Oh, that's a conspiracy theory now." So they're changing the narrative as we go along, and nobody notices the narrative changes and stuff. One thing I wanted to say, I was listening to your commercial about Fukushima, and this is to validate what you're saying, but these same nuclear scientists that I know at Los Alamos, they obviously know a lot about radiation and stuff, they told me that the greatest disaster that has faced mankind for now and in the future is Fukushima.
Thank you for saying that. I've been doing that.
It is going
9
to have
years.
consequences beyond our comprehension. So,
Mitchell, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I thank you for that, because I've been covering this with my colleague, Yoichi Shimatsu, who in my view is the world's preeminent environmental researcher, writer. He's a brave man. He's been to Fukushima itself on a bicycle 8 or 9 times. He's just extraordinary. Dana Durnford up in British Columbia, who has made 6 trips up and down the British Columbia coast, photographing and videotaping the tide pools, which are now, they look like Venus, Mars. There's nothing there. Nothing.
Yeah.
It's just water and rocks.
Right.
You get lucky, you might find one sea urchin under a rock if you look for half a day. It's over. That works all the way down the Pacific coast. There are a couple of isolated little areas not yet taken down, but I had a gentleman on Thursday. In fact, I put a YouTube video of it up. I'll send it to you. He was a resident east of Portland, Oregon, describing the catastrophic eradication of insects, small animals, birds, and I get letters from all over the country, and I've invited people to send them. I have an archive. I've kept these for the last several years, because we are in an extinction event right now. Right now, it's happening. Insects, birds, small animals, the pollution of the ocean, 80% of all the big fishes, or 90% are gone. There has been one live birth of an orca whale in and around the San Juan Islands in the last 4 or 5 years. All the other babies have died. The whales are washing up on the shore with 8 to 9% of their normal blubber, their body fat. They're starving to death. There's nothing left for them to eat. I could go on and on and on about this. I've been on this it'll be 9 years in March. We've covered this emphatically. Thank you for noticing that, and thank you for your comments. Please continue.
Okay, well, another piece of trivia is that, they talk about the waters, this is in Scripture, they talk about the waters being turned into wormwood, bitter like wormwood. Well, radioactive elements are bitter elements if you was to taste them. Okay, and the word wormwood in Ukrainian is Chernobyl. I don't know if you were aware of that, but
I didn't know.
the word Chernobyl means wormwood. We just had in the waters have been polluted with wormwood. The Pacific Ocean was Chernobyl by Fukushima, in other words. So,
correct.
But
absolutely correct.
Here's another thing that the government does, and I've seen them do it time and time again. If the government faces a problem that it cannot deal with and doesn't want to put the funds into, it denies the problem that exists. So that's what you're seeing with Fukushima, it's just denying that it exists. It's the same thing with UFOs. We can't do nothing about it, so the government denies it exists, because they don't want to put money into it. They don't know what to do about it. So if the government can't do something about it, they deny its existence. I've seen them do that in my career time and time and time again. It's just what they do.
The Pacific Ocean tragically is gone. The radiation buildup on land in North America and in fact the entire Northern Hemisphere is constant, chronic. It's building all the time. That's why the level and rate of extinction is increasing. The focus and the intensification of the amount of radioactivity in plants, in animals, and which are food for other animals and plants, is growing all the time. I did taste radioactivity. I was dosed twice within 3 weeks after the Fukushima blasts, when the 3 reactors blew up. I could taste it clearly as day in my saliva, the back of my throat, my sinuses. I knew what it was. Fortunately, I've got this.
It's very bitter tasting.
Yes, it is. That's exactly what it was. There's a product on the site which was developed by a Russian scientist named Dr. Michael Kuryak after Fukushima to try to save lives. They had a staff of hundreds of people, and they came up with a product that's here called Bio-Superfood. It's the combination of the 4 most potent algae on the planet they are chelators of radioactivity. They saved a lot of people after Fukushima. That I've got it on the site. I take it every day. 6 or 8 capsules a day, and I think that's what's saved me from getting really sick. At any rate, would you consider coming back again fairly soon at your convenience? I'd like to have you come back if you'd like.
Sure, anytime.
This has been really extraordinary, and I appreciate it very much, Mitchell. Thank you for being here. We'll talk.
Okay, you're very welcome. And remind people to get my book, A Man Beyond His Mission. If you just type that in, it'll be the first book on Amazon.com that comes up. So
just look under Mitchell's name and guess, and it's right there as well. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Good night. Well, I told you that was good, and we'll talk with him again.